That really meant.
Well, guess what? It didn't work.
Well, people still smoke too, right?
Right.
So I'm challenging that everything's fine.
Okay, so can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
This is with the two amendments.
With the amendments, yeah.
Mrs. Craig? Mrs. Cassell?
Yes.
Mrs. McGowan?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond? Mrs. Fortune?
Yes.
Mrs. McGill?
Yes. We're up to the advocacy committee report. We haven't met this summer as a committee. This afternoon, Linda and I went to the Community in Crisis Task Force meeting for Task Force number 3, which is the school/municipal alliance/parent part of the task force. This task force is Bernardsville, it's the Somerset Hills area. It's organized by the YMCA. And they divided it into seven task forces? Six or seven different ones. There's one aiming at the medical profession, trying to educate them about, it's mainly about the heroin and opiate epidemic. And so we're on the task force that is for the school/parent and municipal alliance. So we had a meeting with them today. They're trying to kind of figure out what they want to do in terms of the parent component, and they're working with the municipal alliance. We were able to update them, which luckily we had the little handout from today's meeting to kind of go through all the different areas of things that we're working on in the districts. We kind of gave them an update about what we've been working on with policies and curriculum, and with the parent group on the Safe Homes program.
Yeah, and Carol Spina gave a little bit of update on that too. She was there.
Or any other liaison reports?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention the Municipal Alliance hasn't met over the summer, but they're going to be meeting on Tuesday, September 2nd. And the other thing is the Somerset County Educational Services Commission Board met on August 7th. So I just wanted to very briefly update everyone. The main topic, again, was the Career Center. So the construction of the Career Center is on schedule. The program is going to open in September using the existing school building that they have, because they don't have the new Career Center finished yet. And the ribbon cutting will take place in October. And this is a culmination of like 7 or 8 years worth of work to get to this point. Hal Dunsavage, who's the superintendent of the Somerset County Youth Services Commission, is going to various Board of Education meetings throughout Somerset County to talk about the Career Center. He has several on his schedule. And then the other thing that came up, it came up kind of briefly, but I just wanted to mention it, was busing. And he mentioned that the focus for the commission now is on Murray Township, Somerset Hills, and Branchburg. And he was recently asked to take on busing for a large district in Somerset County, and he had to turn it down. So it's good that we're able to have Somerset County Youth Services Commission do our busing. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I do have a copy of the most recent handbook for the bus drivers, if anyone wants to look at it. It's pretty lengthy. But there's a lot of safety procedures involved. So that was in the appendix of my packet.
Yeah, we look forward to time.
Linda, the career services sounds very interesting. Is that something that guidance here would want to work with them? Or is it for summer jobs, or is it
No,
for
it's for students.
graduates?
No, it's for special education students. And they're starting out with 2 programs, one of which is a model shop, is a shop rate to teach the students how to work in a regular supermarket. And then the other one, it's changed a couple times, but I think it has to do with motors. I don't remember the exact, I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact. Yeah, but there's a classroom component, and then there's the actual work component.
But is our school working with them directly with helping our students for those?
Well, we
services?
would, if we had students that we wanted to send to that program, we would send them.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Thank you, Linda. We are up to public forum on other agenda items. If anyone has anything they'd like to come up and speak to us about, the board is here. Please put your name and address on it. there's no one for public comment. We are up to board forum. We have 2 items on there. We have our board goals and then we have district goals. So I guess we'll start with the board goals.
Yep. It's the same ones that I sent out.
I just don't see it in my file. Does everyone have it?
Yeah.
Was it in our file or we
It's
agree
here
with it?
someplace.
It was here.
I'm supposed to.
We didn't make it part of the actual agenda, but it was in the weekly packet.
It was in the packet.
It was in the packet, okay, I didn't bring it.
Okay, no, I didn't bring it, sorry. What should I make?
Mike, you need a copy?
I have it here someplace, I probably do.
This is, here it is.
Yeah, sure. Couple extra copies. Susan, would you mind just making a couple extra
Thank you.
copies? Thank you. Right.
I'll done here.
Well, I'll just take the opportunity to mention that what we'd like to try to do is home in on these for September, approval in September. If you remember, we started back in July. I sent out a little calendar with sort of a timeline for how we'd like to try to get an opportunity for the board to discuss both board goals and district goals, and then try to get things adopted for the record in September. So that's kind of where we are. We're sort of in the second round of discussing the board goals, district goals. So that's why we're here and where we're at. And that's all I've got to say for time. So you can make the copies. Right.
So ideas for board goals, you
Right.
draft 2.
And does everybody have the district goals too? Because we're gonna talk about
Yeah.
those too. We can do that too. Do you want to talk about the idea that you had for one goal that didn't make the list the first time?
Yeah, Linda had sent an email. Elaine had brought up an idea about trying to come up with priorities, and we kind of talked about it at our last meeting, and we were discussing committees also, and how the committees make priorities and how it works. And so we were talking about whether it should be a completely separate goal in addition to the committee goal. So we wanted to add that in as a separate one, not as part of the committee goal, was to establish a system for how the board prioritizes.
Right.
The full board
Right.
prioritizes
Opposed to committees.
items. We have to decide how to word it.
Thank you, Susan.
I think that was a good idea.
Yeah.
No, we've already discussed
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had 3 on here, and number 2 has lots of bullet points. That was the one about establishing procedures for the policy for how board committees operate. And I think everyone seemed to be in agreement that we want to do that, and we can fine tune the bullet points as we go along. I mean, that's the whole point, is to come up with all the details about how the committees function. I think this is a good starting point, you know, some of the basic stuff that we need to talk about for that one.
Can I just say, can we consider reassessing which committees we have, in particular, addressing adding facilities or not? You don't have to decide it, but a goal could be evaluated.
As part of this goal, you mean?
Yes.
We can put that on.
Or you
Just
could
evaluate
use
if
it to
facilities
replace
should
it.
come back.
But we have another one.
As
that
a
adds
committee.
priorities, so, I don't think we want to have more than 3. Well, it doesn't matter.
Well, if you're on finance, you may not care, but if you're not on finance, you may want more information. And I think that's something to consider and evaluate.
I think, if I recall, the School Board Association recommended that periodically we review our committees and just make sure we have the right ones. So maybe it could be more broad than that, to make sure that, evaluate our committees and, you know, ensure that we have the ones that best meet our needs.
Just at least
Just
evaluate.
add that as the
adding
first bullet
facilities
point, yeah,
by
right,
goal.
evaluate our committees. And assess,
A little broader on
what do I want to say, assess,
whether they're meeting our needs or something nicer.
We'll leave it later.
As I'm sitting here.
I read the list, it's almost 99% committees. And who should be on them, and how do you organize them, and I think the whole definition of our organization has to be looked at before you get into some of the nitty-gritties, and that is the committee, and this is my opinion, is there to cut the time that the full board would have to spend interviewing everyone. So the committees cut the time, but it doesn't allow the committees or permit the committees to keep things secret. And I think a fundamental flaw in the way we work, a lot of stuff gets lost in the committees, and they don't fully report. I'm not even sure they're addressing important stuff. The district has some major problems that I don't hear discussed very much. The test scores, at least the SAT scores in math, have begun to level off. The enrollment growth is starting to level off. In fact, even falling off in the elementary schools. These are major issues that somebody has to look at.
I think that's the goal that we were talking about
Yeah,
adding,
and I-
was this, for the full, a process for the full board to establish priorities. That's gonna be a separate goal, that's not on here.
Right, and
Well, more discussion, people don't have to agree with me, but I want to hear what they have to say.
Well, that's what this goal, I mean, which is something we were talking about today, but it's the goal of coming up with a method to discuss board priorities. Because I think sometimes some people have ideas who weren't on a committee and don't get a chance to talk about it, so this would be exactly addressing that. But I don't know what the method is now, whether we do it in board form or while we're doing committee reports maybe. After someone does a committee report, you could say, does anyone have any comments on finance issues? And you could say, hey, are you guys gonna look into this or that or something? And it doesn't mean that we're actually gonna follow up on it, but it's good to know what people's input is on a particular topic.
10 minutes every 2 weeks isn't going to make a difference. And I'm arguing that we're missing a whole overview of what's going on. We should be focused. The middle student was another one. We should be looking at the kids and the academic programs and the rest of the district costs, and to spend the whole page on how many members should we have and who are the substitutes. And I just think this is nonsense. And I'll make more comments on the board objectives, but on the district objectives. But I don't think this is worthy of even looking at. I think and 10 minutes every 2 weeks is not going to get it on the table. I think we have to meet and talk about what the board's about, and what are we doing, and are we accomplishing our objectives or not? I don't think we've done that, and I don't think we're doing it.
Well, I think that what you're saying fits into goal number 1, which I put at the top, which is establish a procedure for establishing board priorities. So we have to come up with how we're gonna do it. Are we gonna have board, like at board forum, are we gonna discuss priorities? Are we gonna have committees report in and do it during committee reports? That's the whole point, is we have to come up with a procedure. Because we always say we wanna talk about things, and then often, if it doesn't get on board forum, or someone doesn't put it on and it doesn't get talked about, sometimes it comes up when we're doing committee reports and sometimes it doesn't. So I think we need a more systematic way.
Like saying quarterly, we're gonna talk about this, or,
Maybe some kind of schedule.
Right.
Like, maybe each month we focus on a different committee for a more in-depth discussion or something. Like, we'll have to come up with how we're gonna do it. So I think, is everyone okay with adding a goal like that? We can rewrite it.
Well, can I just add maybe something to that is, if you're not familiar with the committee and what happens in that committee on any regular basis, sometimes you may get an opportunity to speak to somebody that's in that committee, but you shouldn't have to, and it's a more work for the chair, but if the chair puts more information, more detailed information, then it's easier to say, hey, I have a question about that, versus conversations happened and this is the end result. You don't know what the back and forth was. That you may actually have had a different opinion if you knew what the back and forth was. So unfortunately, or fortunately, the summaries that come from the chair sometimes are too brief. And maybe we need to somehow get more information, or know the back and forth, or know the different points of view on any topic. And it's not to call anyone out, but to say, there was some discussion or there was some disagreement, and eventually everyone agreed to this because, and maybe if some of that thought process or discussion or banter was in the committee reports, it would help when it gets up to board forum, so there isn't so much what happened, or I didn't know what happened, or you have to wait till you talk to somebody. So maybe that's something we need to do, is have more detail, share, you know.
Can I make a comment? I mean, the purpose of the committees are to divide the work. What comes out, I think, in the committee minutes, which I think everyone who writes committee minutes does a really fine job of summarizing the meetings and what the topics were and what the majority opinion is and if there is a minority. If a board member has a particular interest in one of those topics, it's up to that board member to talk to the committee chair, talk to other committee members. You don't just have to talk to the chair. You get everyone's point of view. Talk to the administrators on the committee. All I hear is everyone wants stuff spoon-fed to them. If you've got to take responsibility, if you've got an issue or you've got an interest in a topic, you get into it with other people and you ask them about it. It can't just be spoon-fed to you.
It's not
That's
spoon-fed if
what
you
you're
don't
asking
know
for
that there
freedom.
was a discussion, if you don't know there was an
Then
objection, you don't know of some other point of
If you've got
view.
information you want to know about that topic because you have an interest, you start calling people and that will come out.
No, but what
And maybe it'll
you
persuade
shouldn't
you
have
one
to
way or
say,
the
was
other.
there any objection in that committee meeting? Was there any kind of discussion where there was, everybody didn't agree?
Maybe it's not relevant
Because
to
you know
what
what,
the
in the
objections
end-
are. In the end, if
It's
the
not
committee
about
comes
it
out,
being spoon-fed, that's
when the
really
committee comes
condescending.
out,
That's
well,
very
it should fit.
condescending. I mean,
If the information comes out and this is what the committee discussed and that's what they decided, if you don't agree or you want to know more detail, it's up to you to start talking to people and find out. You cannot come out with a tape recording of every committee meeting on the minutes. It's just not possible. That's why we have committees and we divide the work.
What we've generated though is secrecy.
No,
And-
there's
and
no secrets.
I'm sorry, we have a lot of secrecy and stuff
No,
going on
we have
behind
no
closed doors.
secrecy.
All you have to
There's
do,
any secrecy going on.
all you have to
Because
do-
people don't know how to read committee
all
meetings
you
and
have
pick
to
up the
do
phone
is
if they
look
have
at the
questions.
driveway and look at the couple people that participated in the driveway project at Ridge. And you suddenly know, hey, that was all done behind closed doors. So let's not for a second pretend that this is, and emails, we haven't even talked about emails. So we happen to disagree, and I think this discussion ought to be out in the open, because I think it's a serious one. And if the person running the board is of one opinion and keeps things secret, I think
Like,
it,
nobody is keeping
I
anything
think I
secret.
think it presents a
It's
problem
just-
for the rest of us.
It's just absolutely ridiculous that you just keep bringing that up. Nobody's keeping anything secret. Look at the pile of papers you have here. And if you have a question on it, you pick up the phone and you start talking to people.
Most of them I just got.
And then if you have
And
another
half of
question,
this
you
stuff-
bring it up in
And
public.
half of this stuff I don't recognize. So I have
That's because
questions. Well, because it's a secret.
No, it's not a secret. Because you don't see the.
If you don't read email, it makes it really hard for you to get stuff in the moment.
Nothing should be done on email that has anything to do with the board, because it should be out in the public unless it's something very secret. The public ought to be sharing in this too. And to not share it with the public is
I'm
again,
talking about like committee minutes and stuff that come via
Well, the
email. I'm not
public-
talking about secret conversations that you
I
know.
remember the board where the public was allowed to come to the committee meetings, except the personnel. Because the public is what this is about. And, oh no, we could never allow the public. The whole thing has to be looked at, this idea that, hey, 2 or 3 of us are gonna make decisions and no one's gonna know about it. And the discussion is one of the major flaws of this board.
Well, I mean,
I
there's
hope it
boards
changes.
that work as the
There are
committee of the
groups
whole.
like
There's
it.
boards in New Jersey that are the committee of the whole. They do all their work in working sessions at a meeting like this, and people can come and sit there and watch them do it as a giant committee. We are a big district. I can't imagine that we have time to sit here that many nights and do all that. So we have a committee system. I think we can improve how we do it. We have this goal of like trying to look at the committee system and what we can do. But I don't think there's any way to get around the fact that we have committees.
Right.
And you have to have minutes and reports, and you're not gonna be at every committee, so you're gonna have to rely on getting the information from other people. And I don't think that makes it secretive.
I just want to say on the record, I take exception to the idea that things are done in secret by a small group of people, or that I just don't think that's true, and I think most of us, I can't speak for, I think I can actually speak for everyone, that we're all trying to get the information out there. It's difficult if you're running the meeting to also take extensive notes and then put them together in a manner that is readable and is useful to other people. Can sometimes people do a better job or more detail? Sure. And maybe that's something you might want to take up with the committee chair after you read minutes and say, I didn't get that much out of this. Could you, maybe next time, could you give me more information on something? I mean, I would do it that way, because I don't really see a problem with the minutes that we're getting. I feel like I have information, and I think, you know, we do a good job. Nick gives us information in the Friday folder, which is, you know, he'll give us an update on what happened that week. We all get that same information. The only information that goes out by email is within a small group. There will be a committee, because you can't communicate by email. It's against the law for us all to be on an email chain. So that doesn't happen. So there isn't any secrecy going on that way. And I just want to say that, because I don't want to leave people with the misimpression that that kind of thing is going on. It's not.
I challenge that position.
Okay.
You have
So
nothing
I-
substantiated though. You just sit here and make accusations after accusation, and you have no substantiation.
That's an opinion.
It's fact.
That's why we don't get along anymore.
Okay, can we get back to trying to
Yeah, so
establish what our
What
goals
I
are
was
gonna
trying
be
to
here?
say simply was, when somebody writes the committee meeting minutes, if there was somebody in the minority opinion that they don't have to identify the person and call them out and say, there was a minority point of view. That's all I was trying to say in these meeting minutes, sometimes when they come out.
And I wanna add, I always do that.
I'm not
If
talking
the
about
full
you.
I'm just saying,
I'm saying-
I don't think there's any
I
minutes that
was
come
in a
out
meeting,
that
I
long.
have been in a meeting that they didn't write the minority point of view. So I know that doesn't always happen. It's not that I'm trying to pick a fight with that chair, but the point is sometimes it's nice to say everyone agreed or gloss over the whole point of view. All I'm saying is maybe make a little effort make it clear in these directions when we talk about the procedures of a committee, that if there's a minority point of view, that it be part of the rules or the steps or the.
Well, and I think if something was left out of minutes, I mean, all the minutes I've ever typed up, no board member has ever called me up and said, who was at the meeting and said, you forgot to put in something, could you add it? Because I would have gladly sent an additional email with more information. So if you see minutes from one of the committees that you're at and all the information isn't there, point it out to the chairperson, I'm sure they can send out more information. But we can put that in here as far as
That's all I'm saying, is
the
just
committee
putting in
minutes,
this.
we can add the details under committee minutes in this goal, you know, as far as suggestions. So we have one goal that's going to be establishing a method for figuring out what our board priorities are. Then we have a goal about our committees and how they work. And then we had two other ones on here. We had one that was about the new board mentoring program, and then we had one about seeking out ongoing professional development opportunities.
Yeah, I said I didn't like that the first time.
The last one.
Yes, and not that sometimes I think the School Board Association does a good job, but I also think, you know, they're sort of, it's almost like they're selling us something. You know, we have to go to their programs, they mandate that we go to them, and then we pay them to go and be told something. And sometimes they're helpful and sometimes they're not. So I'm not a big fan of that one. I would prefer that we use the other one that we came up with instead. But that's my personal opinion. I mean, I do think it's important that everyone goes to their mandatory training, but beyond that, I don't know that you need.
And I think people are already doing that. I mean, people who want to be are seeking
Right,
out
right.
professional development.
Right.
So I don't know that making it a board goal is going to really change what people are doing. It's people that want to do it are already doing it.
Right.
So we can take that off,
Are
I
you
think.
suggesting we formalize the training of the new board members, or like?
Right, well, we
I
established
already
this year.
do, I know we do.
This year, we established board mentors for each new board member. So we just thought, instead of having each mentor just on their own, like, oh, here's a new board member, go mentor them. We've been compiling documents, like we actually got a whole bunch of ones together to give to Karen that we didn't have in a file to give to Karen when she came on. So Nick is keeping all of it, you know. So as we do it.
So you're setting it
we're
up,
keeping
or
it all.
somebody's setting
Right,
that
and so
up.
if we keep it all in one place, then when a mentor starts mentoring a new person, they have, like, here's what we gave to the other new people, so they have a starting point of like what the other mentors did, and all the
Linda and I,
resources.
that the same kind of thing that you and I went through, meeting all the different administrators.
And that's different, that's the industry training.
That's just training,
Yeah.
so this is something else in
Right.
addition to that?
Yeah.
I just want to say, as the new board member, I think it's wonderful because from Linda's a tremendous source of information, but I think also, where do you start? You know, as we talked about, so I started asking questions about the committees that I'm might be on, but I think it's great. I think going forward, it will benefit any and all future new board members, as well as this body, because there'll be consistency.
Right, yeah. And so that way, if there's more than one new board member at the same time, they'll be getting some of the same information, and then of course we'll have, you know, some consistency of what they're doing. So are people okay with, if we take off the professional development one and keep the other three? Right. Does that sound okay? So as 3 goals? And we'll, like, edit them again and send them around? Okay.
You're not gonna vote that, but if you did, I would say no. Just I disagree with what you're doing.
Should I start talking about it? Okay. Okay, so we have the district goals. Do people have that one, or do we need to? Share? Do you have them?
I have it in my phone.
Oh, okay, okay, they just need to have a bunch of them. Okay. So, that's the timeline, okay. So we went over these last time, so I don't think they've changed much. So the first one is to utilize a comprehensive staff evaluation system which collects data to enhance instructional practices that support student learning and guide staff professional development. The second one is promoting professional learning communities where staff collaborate to design assessments that generate data to be utilized for the purpose of setting smart, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely goals, and designing instruction to meet the needs of all learners. And the third one is increase the district's ability to prepare students for college, career, and 21st century success.
Thanks. Sorry about that, folks.
And then the second page was a timeline for the first one.
Now, I think those are nice in general, and everybody should be for them. However, I think we have strengths and weaknesses in the district, and we ought to be focusing on the weaknesses and the problems. I mentioned enrollment falling off. It may change the way we have to do things in the future. Maybe we don't address it immediately, but I think some thought ought to be given to it. I think the Common Core math program is greatly flawed. And I think the administration admitted that in their first presentation, that we're not going to move algebra down up to the 9th grade, so we're going to modify the major math program that everybody's adopted to try and make it at least adequate for our own students, because if we followed the Common Core, it would be a terrible mistake for our district. I think those are some of the things that we should be talking about. Benchmarking the best districts. What in the world are the 3 or 4 top districts? And I don't think we're in the top 3 or 4. I think we're in the top 15, but I'd like to know what they're doing different. Time on task is a major, major issue. You know, how do we get more class time? And we have the same class time that we had during the Civil War, and the body of knowledge is totally exploded. I mentioned the Common Core. I mentioned the enrollment falling off and the test scores without new people coming in and smarter people. And that was the consensus of everybody I talked to. The test scores have leveled off. Well, maybe we ought to have a stronger program. Maybe in the liberal arts program, 4 reading books is not enough. Maybe we ought to increase that number. You know, there's a lot of questions on how do we make it better. And that's not on the table. And it should be, as far as I'm concerned, those should be the district goals. Make it better. And we're into, you know, motherhood and apple pie. Well, I'm for that too. But it doesn't mean a darn thing. I think you have to identify weaknesses. I think you have to identify strengths, continue to build on the strengths, but fix the weaknesses. We don't do that. We don't. I don't think I've heard a weakness talked at this table for probably 15 years. And that's a problem, because the weaknesses, we have them. So that's my 2 cents.
Well,
I'm not happy with those goals.
I think everyone knows there's weaknesses and wants to address them. Just for an example, is not the first goal, which is the staff evaluation system. You just heard Nick talk earlier about trying to identify the 2 lowest measures when we get the numbers and working on them. So there's ways to address the weaknesses in all of these
Yeah, but
goals.
he didn't explain, and we didn't have time to talk about how many teachers does he expect to get? What are those 25? I don't even know what the 24 items are.
Well, we had a presentation about it.
Well, guess what? I don't have it. Could we get a copy of that too?
Of course.
You know, the 24 items with grades between 1 and 4, and, you know, we don't go in depth because there's never time. We get 5 minutes, and the only ones who ever get into it is the committee members. I'm sorry, it's the way it is.
Yes, good question, sure. That definitely predates my one meeting. I'm wondering where I could find that, because I should
Sure, there was
probably
a
familiarize myself with it.
presentation, do you guys remember when it was? It wasn't that long ago. It was like Sean,
Yeah.
you should
Yeah.
have-
Yeah.
But what is it?
It was just in the spring,
Very
right?
riveting presentation.
Yeah, it was,
I
it was,
believe
it was one of those long board
Was it
meetings, I
April?
know that.
I-
Yeah, it was in the
I
spring.
May.
missed it. I
Yeah.
must have
It was
missed
like
it.
the web meeting.
Yeah.
That's right. It was
I
May
remember.
19th.
Yeah.
May 19th.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need that,
Yeah.
there's 3 of them.
May 19th.
Yeah, I'll just.
Yeah.
Covering it again with the staff on the opening day. Look at some of our, well, that's one of the things we're doing, looking at our strengths and weaknesses from our evaluation from the past years, back to high time.
Forward that into the board member training.
We can, yeah.
Put it on the agenda.
Yeah, put it on the agenda.
If you have it, I'm liable to read it out loud at the next meeting. 'Cause I don't think it's ever been done.
Sean, we saw a little preview at the DIAC committee of like, just a very small snapshot of results,
Mhm.
but you were gonna at some point do a presentation to the board showing the results.
I can
how
do
it
that,
came
yeah.
out.
Yeah,
Because
I
it's very
have a-
interesting to see. It showed it by school, it showed it by grade, it showed it by all the different parts of the rubric that the teachers were evaluating.
Yeah, I
It's
have
very
it by
interesting.
building a line to that
Yeah,
rubric, so
you
you can see, and it's very user-friendly, you know, when you look at that rubric for a layperson to look at it, or folks who aren't in education, I know sometimes we're accused of using too much ed speak, but it's really very plain language, and you can see where some of the weaknesses are, things that we're gonna identify for our professional development programs, and things that we know we need to work on. And that's the beauty of the rubric that we have now, that we can identify specifics that look, we've got 1,100 observations that back up the fact that we need to do more work in questioning strategies, for instance. So, you know, that's data we never had before. It was usually anecdotal. Now it's there are hard numbers backing it up. So, yeah, I can share that with the
Yeah,
board.
I mean, what I thought was cool, you could sort it by however you wanted. You
Right.
could see like, if one evaluator was grading people differently than another one, you could see the trends, so like, you know what I mean?
Within
Yeah,
content
and so if
areas.
you saw like a certain school did different than another school, but they had
Yeah.
different evaluators, you could track it by evaluator, so you can see, oh, maybe someone's just a really hard grader versus someone else. So you can see all of that, and it's very cool. Anyone else have any?
Is there a timeline to decide these district goals? Like this,
We should.
is this in flux or is this?
Not, I mean, these are things that we've already started working on. The district goals are supposed to be the goals that you use to evaluate the superintendent. How well did the superintendent achieve goals? In the same way that the board self-evaluation, which I know you're not a fan of, but the board self-evaluation is supposed to represent how well the board met its own goals, and the superintendent's evaluation, in part, is associated with how well district goals were accomplished. And I think the first goal there does represent trying to find weaknesses and address those weaknesses from a professional standpoint with the instructional practices of our staff. The second goal, I realize, I agree with Mike that it is broad, it is encompassing, it doesn't necessarily represent something that you could point to specifically, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because it gives us a lot of latitude in what it is that we're working on. And one of the things that we've planned for September 2nd, which is our in-service day with the staff, is to address the aspect of this goal. And I underlined it and bolded it in my letter to the staff, which was designing instruction to meet the needs of all learners, because we know that we're not meeting the needs of all learners in a way that I'm satisfied with, and I think that the administration agrees with me, and we care about trying to do better where we feel as though we have some weaknesses. So one of the things that we're going to be spending our entire day doing on September 2nd is working in 3 areas of professional development associated with 3 areas that I see as weaknesses in the district. One has to do with behavior and behaviors of students, and managing behaviors of students, because I think that It's a little bit of a weakness in the district in that it sometimes results in students who are referred for special services that don't necessarily need it. If we can come up with some other ways to try to keep them in the classroom, I think that we recognize that we have a weakness in our ability to support students in between the regular education program and the special education program. I don't think it's a weakness that is unique to Berners Township School District. I think that it is a common problem that a lot of school districts are grappling with, and it explains why we have such high classification rates going on and the growing classification rate around the state, because we have students with problems that are challenging us in ways that we haven't been challenged in the past, and school districts are not necessarily able to respond to those needs within the regular program or even within supporting programs, and as a result, students end up getting referred and or classified because there's not enough middle ground to support the kids prior to the classification. So I see that as a weakness that we're trying to address by educating the staff on some ways to manage some behavioral issues. And one of the other things that we're also seeing contributing to the students and the referral rates, we think, is associated with some learning strategies. So we're doing instruction on the learning strategies that actually, that was a lesson that you worked on, right? So Sean and Dr. Heineman collaborated on the lesson that the administrative team is going to be working on with staff. So we have a really nice in-service day plan where we'll have the staff in breakout groups to work on those two issues. And kind of in the long range is to increase our ability to respond to the students and their needs on an individual level, to try to identify those problem areas as early as possible. So we're talking about adding some more universal assessments, not necessarily big standardized tests that take a lot of time, but rather kind of quick hitters, but more frequent benchmarks for trying to identify students earlier on. Because if we can get early intervention done earlier, then maybe we can cut off some of the problems that the students are having later on. So that's another aspect of weakness that I see that not just myself, but that the administrative team has identified that we want to try to work on. And going hand in hand with that is the third goal, where we want to increase the district's ability to prepare students for college, career, and 21st century success, which in even broader terms is about improving our ability to use technology to help students. And when we look at some of the problem areas that we see the students having, we really feel as though technology has been slightly underutilized, in large part because of how accessible it has been to our students of late. I think that the district has done a good job keeping up with technology, but hasn't necessarily invested as much in the technology's infrastructure for students as it had at one point in time. So we're kind of trying to revisit that issue and infuse more tools to help the staff and have more and creative ways of addressing some of these learning and or behavior issues and or early intervention needs that we see by using technology. And we want to start experimenting with that this year with the Chromebooks, because we really don't want to have Chromebooks sitting around for 8 months out of the year while they're used for 2 months out of the year to do testing. So we see that as another opportunity. And at the other end of the spectrum, we also have the G&T efforts, because when we're meeting the needs of all learners, we're not talking about just the special ed students or just the support students or just the honor students, but also the G&T type student. And I think that we've taken a lot of steps in the right direction for that. And the technology provides us some alternatives there that also address that area. And in addition to that, we know that we want to work on taking a look at the STEM and the STEAM and those types of activities when we look at 21st century success. And we also recognize that when we're trying to prepare for the 21st century, it's harder to do so in the current climate that we have, with the length of the school year and the amount of instructional minutes that we have to use to get the job done. So we also want to evaluate schedules and alternative schedules that might be a possibility that we could present to the board that we hope might provide some alternatives to increase the available instructional minutes, because I agree 100% actually with one of the board members here at the table that time on task is very important, but even more important is that the time on task is used well, and that the staff are professionals that know what to do with the additional time. So if we can put together more time on task with the appropriate activities and curriculum, we certainly hope that we can improve our students' ability to have 20% success. So that's why the district goals are written as they are.
That was a good job.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're good with the district goals, and we're gonna rewrite the board goals a little bit, send them around again to everyone, and then we'll go to approve in September.
Yes.
Was there anything else for board forum? No? Okay. Can I have a move for adjournment, please? Preeti?